Hello everyone, it's Sylvia from Fairlight Tarot. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to have a look at a really fun VR to 78 Puertas. Even though I have watched this video first on Cashia's channel, the tarot map, so I'll link both of those videos in the description box below. And just a little warning, it's going to be a long video because there's about 21 prompts, and so we're just going to have a look at all of these decks, answering to these prompts, and I think that this is going to become the VR of 2024 because everyone is jumping in and it's so much fun, and I really love watching all of the videos and seeing all of these decks together. So the first prompt is, what was your first tarot deck ever? Well, if you've been watching my channel, you will know that I started reading tarot when I was in Italy, and it was basically 36 years ago, which is a long time. And this is the very first deck that I got. Now, this one was a present from my ex-boyfriend, and I have no idea. Well, I kind of was into tarot already, but I wasn't using my very own. I was learning from my auntie, and I think that I actually requested, I mean, it was such a long ago, I just don't remember how I got to have this as a present, but here it is. It was a present for my birthday. So this is an Italian deck. It's called Tarot Indovino, which means the Diviner's Tarot. And the cards have been designed by Sergio Lufolo, and it was published by Dal Negro. I know, ironically, that this deck is supposed to be still in print, even though I think that they might have changed the design of the box. I don't have the box anymore. It is a really quirky deck. As you can see, there's it's very interesting. These are the backs with the zodiac signs. And ironically, even though it does have the major arcanas, all of the minor arcanas are slightly different in the interpretation. And so ironically, my very first tarot deck was not based on the IWS system. It seems to be like it's a bit of a mix between the major arcanas of the IWS, and then a more playing card center kind of divination system for when it comes to the minors. It was, and it still is, a very quirky deck. I actually really like it even after so many years. As you can see, I have been using it a lot, and that was obviously because it was, for a long time, it was the only tarot deck that I had. And I have to say that I didn't start collecting until I was in my probably 18 or 19 years old, because I just probably didn't even have the money to spend on tarot decks. But I always appreciated looking at them, and when I felt like I really wanted to start having more than one deck, that I just reached out for what was available back then. I am still so proud of having kept this deck after all of the times in which I moved, which were many in the last 36 years. And it's still here, still with me. I still use it every now and then, but I think that because the minors are so different, I mean, it goes from slightly different to very different. To the IWS interpretation, I don't necessarily like to use it any longer. But yeah, this is my very first tarot deck ever, and it's the Tarot Indovino, the Diviner's Tarot. The second prompt is, which is your most recent tarot deck? Now, I have to say that most recently I've actually gone in a few oracle decks. So if I have to go back to the very latest tarot deck that I got, it's this one here, and it's the Tarot of Oneness by Robin Voisey. This is an independently produced tarot deck. Many of you will know this deck. It's really beautiful. I don't know why I hesitated for so long before getting it. It's one of those decks that I really ask myself, but why didn't you just grab it? It's still available, by the way, still in print. And I think that there's a few resellers that have this deck. But what I have to say is that I probably thought that between, my modern decks, between the Light Seers and the Unfolding Path and the Walking Meditation Tarot and the Spacious Tarot, I felt like I pretty much had this kind of space, these kind of vibes covered. But then I got the opportunity to grab a copy of this deck, and when I got it in, I started looking at the cards and I thought, yeah, I may have made a mistake here. And then I started using it and I just quickly realized that that is absolutely not the case. Yes, I do have similar decks, but this deck is incredible, especially when you use it for readings, which is all there is to it. I mean, of course, we buy decks for collection purposes, and I am one of those people that definitely reaches out to collectors and just try and get some out of print and hard to find decks. But this one is absolutely perfect for readings. I mean, I was so stoked when I started reading with it. It's a sharpshooter. It goes straight to the point, but it's also, wow, the Nine of Swords. But it's also one of those decks that really tells a story when you're reading with it, and I really, really appreciate that. Generally speaking, I really like the way in which a tarot deck, and modern, especially modern tarot deck, gives you an additional layer of interpretation onto the cards. And so I'm really stoked to have this on the Tarot of Oneness. The next prompt is, which tarot deck has the best colors? Now, you know that I'm a very visual person and colors are very important to me, even though there is a lot of black and white tarot decks that I appreciate. But when it comes to color, it needs to be a color palette that really that tells me something. So, and sometimes it's actually difficult. So I have to go with this deck, which is the Tarot Bot by Michael Murdoch. This deck, I apologize, I don't know whether it's still available or not. It is an indie deck. It was pretty famous a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, perhaps even longer. It is a really quirky deck. So Tarot Bot, because it's based on robots, as you can see, and they are depicted, you know, in these stories that remind us of the meaning of the card. So, as a matter of fact, I believe that this is one of the Black's clones that has been really, really well made. Each and every one of these cards really communicates the message in an effective way, and I really love using it. But because this prompt was all about the colors, I have to say this is definitely my favorite color palette. And it goes from the really nice oranges and reds and very saturated yellows to the teals and the greens. But it's a very complete kind of color palette as well. It's not just thematic, I would say. It's not just, you know, warm colors or not just cool colors. It's pretty much complete, but it's very nice because of that. There was another contender to this, and I was looking at them, and the other one was the Book of Shadow, The Alchemy Story by Andrea Aste, and the colors on that deck are absolutely fantastic. But if I have to choose between the two, I actually do prefer this one. It's also because obviously the theme of the deck is very quirky. Like I said, the robots, and the fact that it's really, let's say, it's a modern take on the RWS, of course, because we do have robots. But at the same time, it feels like it's very human to me. All of these robots have actually expressions, and they are depicted in a very human kind of act, like, you know, raising your arms to the moon, and the High Priestess, for example, the star. It's really a nice card. And so I always thought that this deck was at the same time really quirky, funny, whimsical, but very, very spot on as well. And of course, the color palette is just really my favorite. So this is the Tarot Bot. So the next prompt is, which tarot deck has the best faces? I love this prompt because expressions are very important to me, and I had to go with the Tarot of the Abyss. This is by Anatorian. As you can see, this is you know, at the other end of the spectrum. This is a black and white deck, even though I have to say there's a lot of shades, obviously, and the way in which Anna has articulated the artwork in the cards is very, very expressive. But I just absolutely love the faces on the cards. I mean, they are really, really reflecting in the best possible way the meaning of the card. So if you look at the Six of Cups, this is a person that is clearly lost in thoughts, and they're just thinking about their past and remembering how it felt much safer, or they're kind of remembering something that has happened and they're not there in the present moment. They're definitely thinking back to that memory from the past. But if you look at the Three of Cups, for example, I just love the way in which these two characters break the fourth wall and they look directly at the reader, inviting the reader to join them. And you definitely have this invitation because you actually look at the card and you see that the hand which is holding the cup here is supposed to be your hand. And so on the Eight of Cups, for example, there is this sense of satisfaction coming from the face of this person that has decided to leave because there's nothing still standing for her behind. Everything is broken. It feels like there's nothing that can be saved. And therefore, she's just breaking up with that and moving on. But she's not moving away from the reader. She's actually moving towards the reader, which is absolutely fantastic. Or the Strength card, even the expression of the lion is great. And I love this sense of peace, which is a bit in contradiction with the general meaning of the Strength card, but I really like that there is this sense of peace after the lion has been tamed. So this is showing at the Strength card in a moment in which you have reconnected with yourself of self, with your sense of self-confidence, and you've erased all your doubts. Or, for example, I love the fact that we've been given a couple of alternative cards to the Ten of Swords and the Three of Swords. And in this case, the Ten of Swords, which is my favorite, it shows the wisdom in the eyes of this person that has gone through a lot. They have lived their whole life. And it is on the, let's say, it's probably an elder. And they have accumulated enough experiences in life that they can actually allow themselves to look directly into the eyes of the owl, which is expressing wisdom. I love this deck so much for many reasons, I have to say. It's also the perspective that we've been given in many of these cards. It's just really fantastic. Like this Ten of Pentacles, for example, it is showing the symbols which may be traditional of the RWS, but in a non-traditional way, which is because they are depicted on the hands of these two persons. Or, you know, the sense of being restless and annoyed and probably just bored with yourself with the Four of Cups. And there's so many of these cards that I actually really appreciate because they show how exquisitely humans we all are, but at the same time we're depicted in that sense, in that moment in which we decide to do something. And so we stand up for our own guns, but we feel confused because everyone is against us. Or, you know, we are definitely enjoying this sense of victory. There's so much. There's a lot of talk that comes out of these faces, and they are so very expressive. So this was a direct choice. Like I could not have chosen any other deck in my entire collection when answering to the prompt, which tarot deck has got the best faces, because I absolutely I absolutely love this deck, and I think that it's one of those decks that really stays with you even after the reading. And you know how much I love Anna Torian's work. So this is the Tarot of the Abyss. So the next prompt is, which is your largest tarot deck? And that was easy because it's this one here. And actually, let me just zoom out because it is that big. I have to zoom out and I need the full wide angle. So this is a very special deck. It's published by In Meneghello. I bought it directly from In Meneghello in Milano. And this one has got a very long name in Italian. It's Viaggio di un manichino in 22 arcani. So it's the journey of a dummy in 22 arcanas. And basically that's what the tarot deck is like. It's a 22 card, so it's a majors only deck. It does come with the guidebook, by the way, which is not something that I can say for all of the decks by Meneghello, but this one has got the full title. So the full title is actually The Wonderful Journey of a Painter's Dummy. So this is by Maestro Osvaldo Menegazzi. It was originally published in 1993. I love that I have this deck, that I was so lucky as to get a copy of this deck. It's not that easy. What happens with Menegallo decks, they do sell them internationally, but they use DHL, and so the prices for shipping are just crazy. And I have to say, I was quite happy to get as many decks as I possibly could when I went to visit their shop in Milano. They're absolutely lovely, by the way. We had a conversation. It was really, really nice. But this is, just to give you an example, this is the Tarot of the Abyss. And just to show you the difference in size, it's going to be absolutely striking because we're looking at this. So basically, this is a standard tarot deck size from US Games. And as you can see, it's practically almost twice as tall and a fair bit wider. And it makes it just a huge tarot deck, which is, well, it's impossible for me to shuffle it. But I have to say, I never use this deck. This is not one of those decks that I use for readings or for any other purpose. I just really prefer to just keep it as a collectible item, even though every now and then I really actually like to look at the cards, because this is indeed, as you understand from the title, this is the journey of this painter's dummy. And so the painter just goes around and takes the dummy with themselves, and whenever they stop, they just put the dummy in a position and then they take a painting. And I just really love the concept, but at the same time, this is definitely not a deck that I like to use. As a matter of fact, I never actually read with this deck, but it's definitely the biggest one that I've got in my collection. And obviously, because we talked about the largest tarot deck, now the next prompt is, which is your smaller tarot deck? Now I have to go to the Tarot Universale, so the Universal Tarot by Sergio Toppi. And let me just zoom in, because obviously being it the smallest one I've got, we really have to zoom in, otherwise you won't be able to see it. Now, again, just to show you the difference, this one, sorry, I know I'm zooming in and out, but just to show you how how big this one is and how small this one is. And this is the Tarot of the Abyss, which is pretty much the same size of the box. So you can tell the difference between these three. Now, this one is a very special deck because it's, first of all, it's a Universal Tarot. I don't think that it's one of those ones that has been reprinted. It's a mignon size, so it's printed by Los Carabel. It was printed back in the 90s. And some of these 90s decks from Los Carabel have been reprinted, and I'm thinking about the Primordial Tarot, also by Sergio Toppi, has been reprinted. It had a different title, now it's called the Primordial Tarot. This one, the Universal Tarot, has not been reprinted, but there was a full-size deck. I, however, could only find the mini mignon. I absolutely love this deck so much. It's the artwork is just spectacular, and again, it's just the majors. But look how beautiful! I really love it. The artwork is spectacular. It's very similar. If you're familiar with the Primordial Tarot, you will have no problem in recognizing the artwork from Sergio Toppi. It reminds me so much of the 70s, probably because of the artwork, but also because of the color palette. And it is really beautiful. I just find it very artistic, very interesting. I love this deck so much, but it is tiny. And again, even though I have been not using this deck, but I've been taking a lot of photos of this deck for posts on Instagram, for example, I don't use it because, well, first of all, it is a majors only, and also because it actually was rather difficult to get a hold of this deck. And I really don't want to ruin it because nowadays it's probably also quite expensive to get it. But this is my smallest tarot deck. So the next prompt is, what tarot deck has the best court cards? Now, if you've watched my channel, you will know that I was going to talk about the Cirque du Tarot by Lisa Robertson. Now, the artwork is by Josh Taft. I talked about this deck every time I talk about a different way or a different perspective to look at the court cards. By the way, this is a Llewellyn publication, so obviously it comes with all the plus size at the by Llewellyn. So the really nice guidebook, for example, in full color with really nice artwork, full page. And it's the typical Llewellyn cardstock, so either you love it or you hate it. Personally, I find that it's one of the easiest decks to use when you actually want to use the deck. Now let's go to the chord cards, which I think are actually at the back, because I have been talking about these chord cards in a couple of videos, and the reason is because this is one of the few decks that actually has a slightly different take on the chord cards. So let me just make some room. And let's say these are the kings. So let's put the swords, for example, king of swords, queen of swords. Let's do it this way. And the knight of swords and the page of swords. There you go. So this is a concept that is actually common in all of the chord cards, but I've just taken the swords because they're right here. What I find that it's actually kind of revolutionary and very, very helpful if you struggle sometimes in understanding the evolution through the chord cards. I recommend this deck because you have a very clear indication on how to read this evolution, on how to see pan out through the chord cards themselves. So we start with the page of swords, which is a person. Oh, this is the Sword to Tarot, by the way, and obviously these are artists that work in a circus. So we have the Page of Swords sitting at their desk, and they're putting on makeup, they have their costume there, they have the prop there, they have everything is ready to be done. But it's the very beginning of a cycle, it's the very beginning of this kind of evolution. So they're not there yet. They haven't been wearing the uniform, they haven't been putting on makeup yet. They're in the process of doing that. What I really like is that you can actually tell this evolution by looking at the other chord cards. So the Knight of Swords, for example, is already pretty much wearing everything. But if you notice, and that's something I really want to draw your attention to, in here, on one side of the face, he or she or they have a beard. It's a lavender colored beard, which is really cool, I think, and also longer hair. And on the other side of the face, there is a more feminine kind of face. When we look at the queen, we can definitely see that the queen is this side of the face of the knight. So the queen is actually representing the evolution from the page into the knight that incorporates both the queen and the king, but is still at a level in which they're still wearing their gloves. So they are ready, but they haven't started acting yet. And then when we see one side, the feminine side, the divine feminine side of the knight, we see that is actually the queen. And then when we move on to the king, we see again the lavender beard and long hair, which is really telling us that this is a complete evolution. So there is this kind of maturation that we see going through the cards, but it's all in one person. So it's almost as if we were saying that we all have the possibility to start our journey as a page at the very beginning and then mature progressively into the knight and the queen and then ultimately the king. I really, really love this deck for this reason, and I do believe that it's the best deck when it comes to, an additional layer of interpretation of the chord cards. So the next prompt is, what is your most worn out tarot deck? I will have to go with the Osho Zen Tarot. This particular edition or this particular copy of mine, I have another two copies, one which is so much more recent with the full size and also the pocket size. This one is definitely, I don't know if you can tell, but the edges are really frayed, and that's because I've been using this deck like crazy. I remember that this deck was my go-to deck probably 25 years ago, something like that. All of my friends were asking for readings. I used to live in the Netherlands back then, And that was definitely one of the decks that I was always using for reading for friends, because it was a very, and it still is, a very deep kind of deck. It's one of those decks that it's got this way of showing you the same meaning of the cards of the RWS system, but it does give you a much deeper way to interpret the cards and to look at them, and the way in which the keywords are associated with the artwork in the cards themselves is absolutely genius. I really find this deck brilliant. The illustrator is Madhava Padma, and Madhava Padma has also released this year another deck which is called the Sacred She Tarot. And the Sacred She Tarot is the deck we are using in my memberships to just do a deep dive. And we're also going hand in hand with the Osho Zen Tarot, because I believe that these two decks have a lot to say. And Madhava Padma herself, in the introduction of the Sacred She was mentioning that when the Osho Zen Tarot came out, it was the product of the time, so it was reflecting a some kind of an imbalance, or let's say a predominant divine masculine energy. And so she's hoping that with the Sacred She Tarot, she will help bring back the balance to something more even, with a strong presence of the divine feminine. In any case, this is a deck that I still love to use, and it's definitely my most worn out deck, the Osho Zen Tarot. So the next prompt is, which is your most esoteric tarot? Now, I have a couple of decks, because I have the Atala, I have the Hermetic, but I chose this one. So this is the Tabula Mundi, and this is the mini, or the extra small edition. Let me just zoom back in. This is a very beautiful deck, I have to say. It is based on the Aleister Crowley's Hermetic titles, not the Golden Dawn title. So again, I'm doing the deck and walk, and every time I just compare the two titles. So the Hermetic titles originally were assigned by the Golden Dawn to the Esoteric deck of Thoth. However, Aleister Crowley, when he designed, and let's say Lady Frigga Harris designed the Thoth Tarot as imagined by Aleister Crowley, he actually reassigned the Hermetic titles. And the reason behind that was that, of course, he was doing some proselytism, in the sense that it was obviously he had a community, and he was trying to relay the message back to a large community as possible. And so in many cases, the messages had to be more direct, and in order to be more accessible, they had to be oversimplified. Personally, I understand completely. So they've done a fantastic job, and to be honest with you, I love the Thoth Tarot by Aleister Crowley. It's just absolutely fantastic. The artwork by Lady Frigga Harris was nothing short of stunning. This one is incredibly beautiful as well. But I have to say that I do prefer the Hermetic title as originally designed by the Golden Dawn, because I just see that there's a lot more that can be, let's say, understood of the cards thanks to that. But again, this one, let's say this one takes on Aleister Crowley's perspective. So obviously all of the keywords at the bottom of the minors are reflecting Aleister Crowley's interpretation. And this is by far, I think it is one of my most esoteric decks, not the only one, but most likely one of the most esoteric ones. The next prompt is, it was a bit difficult for me, because, so the prompt is this one. What tarot deck is the best one for shadow work? Now, I have to specify that this is very personal, and I don't always use the same deck, so I just had to make a decision, and I decided to show you the deck that I use for shadow work right now, because next month it could be a different one. I do tend to see shadow work as evolving with the seasons, or at least the way in which I relate to the seasons. And so obviously it's not the same. I do understand that this might not be for everyone, and I actually do not recommend it for a shadow work simply because it's a very dark deck. However, it does have a depth to it that I just need right now. And so I'm talking about the Joker Tarot. Now, this deck was a Kickstarter from last year, one of the rare Kickstarter by Los Carabeo. I had to get this deck because if you follow my channel for a while, you know how much I love Corrado Roy. And Corrado Roy is, together with Anatorian, is one of my favorite illustrators of all time for tarot. Corrado Roy, though, is also an illustrator for graphic novels. And I literally grew up reading Dylan Dog, which is indeed an Italian graphic novel which has been illustrated by, among others, by Corrado Roy. I really absolutely love his work. I know that this deck is really, really dark. I know that it's not for everyone, but there is something about the images, the intensity of the images, and also the insanity of the images, because let me tell you, there is so much philosophical work that goes behind the creation of this deck, and especially the guidebook, which is not a guidebook. The guidebook is this one, is the little white book, and you can use it. It's fine. But if you buy the coffee table book, which I don't even know if it's still available or whether it will be available sooner or later, it might become available. Sometimes Scarabeo launches Kickstarter campaigns, and I like the Goetzia or the Notoria, they actually made them available mass market. So it is possible that one day you will be able to find this deck, even if you didn't back the Kickstarter. But the coffee table is a companion book, and it's really deep. It reminds me, the structure of it reminds me a little bit of the companion book that goes with the Tarot of the Drowning World. And the reason behind that is because there's so many references to philosophy that it's just absolutely, it's fascinating. I really love it. And ironically, it's called the Joker Tarot because the Joker is supposed to be the only person that is actually sane. So it's kind of a counter trope in the sense that, the Joker is the figure of the one that always laughs, the one that takes life with lightness, not seriously, and it's often very, deride and looked at and probably misunderstood as well. But because of that, it offers the truth, simple, without any kind of filters. And so this is a deck that is really centering on the truth. And I know that it's at times a bit creepy. I understand that. But then again, I do love the horror genre. So this is nothing to me. This is not scary at all. But it is one of those decks that, because it really does not use any filters, for me personally, it works really, really well when I need to do some kind of shadow work. So this is the Joker Tarot. So the next prompt is, what tarot deck has the best backs design? I have a confession to make. I don't pay that much attention, or let's put it this way, I should put more attention to the backs of my decks. I don't know why I don't do that. If I find the backs very functional, so I don't really pay that much attention. I do notice them if they're really, really beautiful, and that's why I had to go with the Ephemera Tarot by Arthur Wang. And the reason why I've chosen this one is because these backs are absolutely amazing. I mean, look at these. I need to angle the card in such a way that you can see that all of this is gold foil. It is fantastic. I love it so, so much. And I remembered it immediately because honestly, I wouldn't even remember the backs of a deck. What I also like is that there's a lot of inscription here, and it looks like it's cuneiform writing, and I love that there's so many writings in the cards as well in different languages. And you know that I absolutely love languages. They are very, very important to me, and I do tend to see tarot as some kind of a translation work, because you are called to listen, or at least understand the message that comes out of the cards, interpret it, and then relate back to the person you're reading for, because obviously they may not know this language and you do. That's your role, that's your job as a tarot reader. I love this deck so much. It is so incredibly beautiful. I know that there's a lot of people saying that the characters on the cards actually look that they are too picture perfect. And I agree, but on the other hand, I can't help but feeling that this was actually the purpose. Not for admiration or for creating a standard, which is absolutely not, but to point out that these are not human beings, they're archetypes of human beings. And so they represent an idea or a concept rather than actual people. As you can see, this is I believe this is Mayan. So it's just absolutely amazing. I love the fact that most of the major cards have been renamed. At the beginning, I wasn't too happy about it because I had to go back to the guidebook quite a fair bit, but then the more you read with it, the easier it becomes. And I have to say, I absolutely love all of these cards. I love all of the choices. The minors are really beautiful, even though they're slightly minimalist. But I just really love the way this deck reads. I love the way in which it's being presented. I love everything about it. It's an independently produced deck, still in print. It is not, as you can imagine, a cheap deck, by no means. See, this is, for example, I believe this is Mandarin, Chinese, and it is by no means a cheap deck. But then again, I really do believe that it gives you so much back that you kind of also pay for the quality, because this is an incredibly beautiful cardstock with the rose petal finish, but it's an advanced kind of rose petal because it doesn't have any problem with the cards gluing one to the other. This is a pentagram with nodes, for example. And this is, for example, the star card. And I just absolutely love it that it's been renamed the Defiance card. And the Defiance, if you read on the guidebook, is because this person is actually really struggling, but they put in all of their efforts into touching the sky and touching the the constellation of the star. So it's a testament to how much someone can do when they feel the support of the star, the elders, for example, their ancestors, but they also feel that sense of hope that is really driving them. And I really, really love this deck. But we were talking about the backs, and so that's, these backs are so beautiful, and that's the reason why I picked this deck for this prompt, the Ephemera Tarot. And the next prompt is, what tarot deck has the best card stock? Now, I've talked about this a few times. My favorite cardstock ever is the US Games battery cardstock from the 80s. I do have a couple of decks from the 80s from US Games, among which the Soft Tarot, for example, and I believe I also have the Medieval Scapini, which is absolutely so really cool to the touch. But I wanted to talk about the Somnia Tarot. So this is another independently produced deck by Nicola Bruno. Bruno is a photographer, and he's done a fantastic job with this deck. This is one of the decks that I honestly did not want to buy. I did not want this deck. I kept on looking at it. Everyone was talking about it a couple of years ago. I kept on thinking to myself, I'm gonna freak out because I do have a bit of fear of confined spaces or claustrophobia, let's put it this way. And the fact that 90% of the characters are actually covered in a shroud, and on top of that, they're also tied down with a rope. And because that's not enough, in many cases, they're just soaked in water. So if I wasn't freaking out up until that point, I certainly am now. So I really thought this deck is going to be triggering for me. I'm not going to be able to work with it. And then I finally got it, and oh my god, this is so beautiful. Yes, I do have some problems with some cards, not all of them, however, but this is one of the most beautiful star cards I've ever seen. The sense of hope and that sense of dawn after a difficult night is just really, really touching. Many other cards in this deck are really moving, and I really like working with it. And this is so buttery. It feels like, I don't know, it's silky at the same time, and it fans out like a charm, and I absolutely love it. If this deck were a slightly smaller size, because as you can see it's very big for my hands, I would absolutely love using it. It is a bit on the larger side, so I sometimes put off using it because I know that I have a little bit of trouble when shuffling it. But I've seen a lot of people trimming off the borders to that, just down to the artwork, and that could be an idea. Although it is an indie deck again, and it's not entirely, you know, it's not cheap. Let's put it this way again. But this is the best cardstock. I absolutely love it. So this is the Somnia Tarot. And the next prompt is very similar because it says, what tarot deck has the best soft, silky touch? And because a contender to the last prompt was the Yokai Yochi, I'm actually going to refer to the Yokai Yochi as an answer to this prompt because this deck is absolutely fantastic. I think this is by far giving me the best tactile experience of all of the decks that I've got in my collection, which is not a small collection. This is, I have to say, very soft linen finish, but it's so soft that when you don't, let's say if you look for it, you can see that it's linen. But if you didn't know, you would be excused to think that it's not. It feels so silky. It is just absolutely amazing, and it's the triad of my favorite cardstock is definitely the Somnia. This is the Yokai Yochi, and the next one is going to be the third deck among my favorite ones. Ironically, they all three of them have different cardstocks, so it's kind of interesting that I don't fixate on one type. But this is absolutely superb. I really love having this deck in my hands, looking through the cards, using it, which is ironic because I try not to use it too much because it is, and it was an indie deck. It's out of print, very hard to find. People on Facebook groups are asking for ridiculous, insane prices for this deck. But I understand because, you know, it is one of the most beautiful decks, and it's based on yokai. Yokai are supernatural beings from Japan. With my members, I've actually done the study, a deep dive of each and every one of these yokais. You will find if you want to become a member on my channel, there will be a video. Well, no, actually, there's like 8 videos where I actually go down the rabbit hole and I talk about each and every one of these yokais. And I refer them back to other lokais of the Japanese tradition. We looked into the provenance, whether they were born in Japan or imported from China or from India. You know, if they were benevolent yokais or malevolent. It was really a lot of fun talking about the yokais. But definitely this is such an amazing silky experience, tactile experience to use this deck, the Yokai Yochitaro. So the next prompt is, what tarot deck has the best sound when you shuffle it? And I had to go with my third favorite one when it comes to cardstock, and it's the Emperor Nora Tarot by Jamie Richardson. This is in specific the Awakening edition. Apologies again because this deck is not available anymore. Jamie has she's she's moved on to different things, and so it's very unlikely that this deck is going to be reprinted, which is such a pity. But this one, so I'm not going to shuffle because this one is on the larger side, but the noise I wanted to do like this. I don't know if you can hear it. It's a fantastic noise. It does give you that really beautiful, soft, audible sensation. It's one of the most interesting things that I always relate to a deck, and I bond with a deck by pretty much using all of my senses if I can. Not the taste. But certainly I like to hear the sound of a deck. I like to feel it in my hands. I like to smell it. Some decks have really strong ink smells because perhaps they've been put in the box before the inks were given the opportunity to fully dry. And so I'm not entirely happy about those decks. But for example, I was talking the other day about one of my unicorn decks that I was able to get this year, which is the Leonora Carrington. Tarot. And that one is published, and by the way, still available on Folger Press website. And Folger Press has been anointing, so I've been sent in these decks that have been sent out. And after a few months that I kept it in the box, so the oil and the scents were on the outside of the box, obviously, but it's kind of migrated inside, and the cards actually smell really, really nice now. So that's another way to bond with the deck for me. Obviously, it's a bit of a tricky one, especially when it comes to smells, because I believe that not everyone likes all of the smells. Does it make sense? So there's so many different perfumes in the world because not everyone likes the same perfume, right? So it is a bit of a tricky thing, but I was lucky enough that I actually enjoy the one that they sent me. So, but this one is definitely when I shuffle it, and I'm just gonna shuffle it this way. So I don't know if you could hear it. Sometimes it's difficult because I have to filter out the background noises in the camera when I process the video. But in any case, this is my favorite when it comes to the noise. So the next prompt is a very interesting one, and it's which of your tarot deck is the most misunderstood? And you probably know which one it is because it's this one here. So this is the Lorenzi Tarot by Irene Lorenzi. This has been published by US Games, if I'm not wrong. Yes. It's on a larger box. I honestly do not understand why they produced it this way. At first I thought it was because of the guidebook, but then if you go inside the guidebook, you don't have that much information, even though you do have a lot of drawings. But I feel like they could have cut a page, like this could have been 2 pages with the spine in the middle. And so they could have just opted for the normal kind of size in the box, but it doesn't matter. I mean, this is, I believe, one of the most misunderstood tarots that I have in my collection. And the reason is because, admittedly, it is a bit odd. Let me just say odd instead of creepy. I personally don't think it's creepy, but there's a lot of people who do. And personally, I really like it. I understand that it's not for everyone. I understand that one of the main reasons why it's not for everyone is also because the cards are not necessarily going straight to the meaning. It is not very intuitive. As a matter of fact, it feels almost as if it were a bit obscure, let's put it this way. The drawings, I personally like the drawings. I really enjoy this type of art style. I enjoy a lot also this type of color palette. But that's personal, of course. I mean, I understand that, as I said, it's not for everyone. Personally, I really love it. But let me just tell you, because I've been in a crusade to make this deck more popular because I really, really love the artwork. And then what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to show you how it pairs up with a recent oracle deck that entered my collection that I really, really enjoy. And I know that there's a lot of people who love it. So let me just show you. So we're going to pair it up with the Wisdom of the Wild Things Oracle written by Angie Salins, and the artwork is by Eva Boniva. This is also by US Games, because let me tell you, the experience of using the Lorenzi deck with this oracle has been completely different from before. And I believe that these two are absolutely a match made in heaven, and I really, really adore them together. So I feel that we have a lot of common traits to these two. There's very similar color palette. What happens is that even the artwork, even though obviously we're talking about 2 completely different artists, but even the artwork is resonating between the cards. As always, I love when there's these kind of bridges that have been built between the cards. So there's a lot of color palette that are reminding from the tarot that are reminding me of the oracle deck and vice versa. The strangeness or weirdness, let's call it this way, of the characters in both the decks, that, you know, it makes almost as if the Oracle deck were making the tarot deck at ease with this weirdness. I don't know if it makes any sense at all, but it does for me, in the sense that being both of them a little bit weird, a little bit strange and odd, it's almost as if it were giving me the possibility to find a place where both these two coexist. And it is a wonderful place. It's a very odd place. It's a very unique place. But I really, really enjoy these two together. And this is just when it comes to the aesthetics. So when I actually start reading with these two, it actually works really, really well. So this is probably thanks to the fact that the Oracle deck is very talkative. So welcome the unwelcome. So this is an invitation to be at ease with something that is weird, because something that is weird, and we don't recognize ourselves with it, it means that it feels alien. It means that it's awkward, and it's not necessarily always welcome because it doesn't tell us anything about ourselves. That's normal. That's human behavior. However, when you focus on trying and welcome what is different from us, you accept the weirdness. So between the Eight of Wands, which is also this sense of movement. But I was listening to, no, I was reading Jessica Doerr's book, Tarot for Change, and I love the description of the Eight of Wands because it also points to confusion. It points to pure energy and pure speed without necessarily knowing where to go. And I absolutely love that because it really gives me that experience of perhaps being confused as to what is happening around me. And so that is a feeling that might not be welcome, but I need to accept it at the same time, because obviously I need to create this kind of bridge with the Ace of Cups, which is giving me the possibility to find a different relationship, a different way to relate myself to others. So I really love these two together, and I don't know whether this will make anyone change their mind about the Lorenzi Tarot, but I do believe that the Lorenzi Tarot is the most misunderstood tarot in my collection, at least, because I get it, I completely get it, but it's not necessarily, it's not an intuitive deck, as I said. It's really weird. I get it, I completely get it, but I do love it. Look at that. Remember the Wooby? And it's like Linus's blanket, really, the Wooby and the Tower and the Page of Cups. I love these two so much. So the next prompt is, where am I? Which is your most ancient tarot deck or the most historical one? Honestly, I had to go with this one. So this is the Giuseppe Maria Mitelli, so the Mitelli, il tarocchino, o i tarocchini. It says secolo XVII, so the 17th century. This is also an Italian deck published by Dal Negro. It's a very old deck, and you can tell by the fact that it still has a price. Oh, no, it's got a price in euros. Well, look at that. I thought it would still be in the price in liras. So it's at least from 2001 onwards, but I don't think it's much younger than that. I never used this deck. I bought it because it was a collectible. Even when I bought it, it was already a collectible. And it is, I don't have the Solabusca. And so I thought, okay, well, i tarocchini, so Mitelli would have been the most ancient one, the second most ancient one. Had I had the Solabusca, I could have gone with that one. But this is very similar. I have to say there's not much difference between, well, there's some differences. I mean, it's not the same as the Solabusca, but the art style, let's put it this way, the art style does remind me of the Solabusca in many cases. There are no titles. It's just one of those decks that it's also showing Peepish Miners, even though I have to say I really love the depiction on the cards of the miners. Yes, they are peepish, obviously, but you do see the expressions on the faces. I have to say, I never used it for reading. I don't think it's meant to be used for reading. I mean, you could, obviously, but it is one of those decks that I got it when I got it because I wanted a collectible item. I have heard about this, and so I just wanted it in my collection. I personally, I don't even, it's not, let's say it's not my favorite when it comes to the art style. I probably prefer when we're looking into ancient tarot decks or historical ones, I kind of prefer the Marseille. And I have a Nostradamus. I also have a Cagliostro deck. And I have a very old Marseille by Heron. So I could have shown those ones, but I just wanted to show you this one because I feel like I never show this deck around. So this is the Mitelli Tarot. The next prompt is really fun. It says, which tarot deck was the most surprising in a good or a bad way? I decided to choose surprising in a good way because if a tarot deck is surprising in a bad way, guess what? I rehome it. It's just that whenever I feel like I don't vibe with the deck, I feel bad because I don't want it to stay on a shelf and gather dust. And so I think that there'll be someone else who's going to appreciate it a lot more than I do. So I don't keep a deck that was a bad surprise for me for long. So all of the surprises will be good. And I had to go with this one. Oh my goodness. Cozy Witch Tarot deck by Amanda Lovelace. This is a mass market deck it's not the usual, let me see, Andrew Mill. So this is an amazing deck that I resisted buying for so long because every time that I looked at it, I kept on thinking to myself, I could be this girl's mom. When it comes to age, I could be their mom. And so I was like, I don't really want to look at a hypothetical child for each and every card. I didn't think it was going to resonate with me. I didn't think I was going to relate to this deck because indeed the characters in the cards are so very young. There's a couple of exceptions, but not that many. And on top of everything, I have to say, the exceptions that you see here are more like a crone stage of life, which I don't feel like I am at that stage yet. So I'm kind of in between because I'm not a maiden. And so I thought, you know, it's a deck that it's not going to resonate for me. I got it because I think it was Black Friday sale. It was a massive sale. I got it for like the price of a pizza in Sydney, not even less, I have to say. And so, you know, I thought to myself, let's just try. I mean, I did have a look at some of the keywords messages at the bottom, and I did find that I definitely resonated with some of them. And so I just wanted to give it a chance. And I'm very good at that. I always keep an open mind. And I have to say, guys, that was a fantastic surprise. This deck is a fantastic reader. I don't mind that I don't see myself in the cards. It's absolutely fine. I do, however, feel how compassionate this deck is. But it's also, it's not just kind of compassion. It's also really straightforward. And so I actually use it a lot for readings, believe it or not. And I really like that I gave this deck the opportunity to be in my collection because I really, really enjoy it. The next prompt is, which tarot deck has the best purchase story? I had to go with this one. So this is the Saki Saki Tarot. So you will know that Monica Kliosaki has released, I think it was already a couple of years ago, another version of this deck called the I Am the Artist Tarot. So it's not called the Saki Saki Tarot anymore. This deck has been out of print, hard to find, incredibly expensive for such a long time. And I've seen it in a few channels and I really wanted it. And I really kicked myself for not getting it when I could. And there were people asking for $500-$600 for it, which is way outside my price range. But I was always, you know, it always was at the back of my mind. It felt like it was the one that got away. It was at top of my wish list. I was asking people directly if they had it. But I could really find no one that was ready to part ways with this deck with a reasonable price. And so one day I saw this lady from Canada and she was offering this deck for a trade. However, it was a very interesting trade because she didn't want any out of print deck, but she wanted several still in print decks. And I did some calculation, and especially because I could buy them new and most of the resellers were in the US. And so it turned out that I did not pay that much money for this deck in the end because I got all of the new decks to her from the resellers in the US or Canada. So she received it, and when she received all of them, she sent me this deck. And at the end of the day, she was super happy. I was super happy. It was the most satisfying experience of purchasing a deck in a Facebook group, or purchasing or trading a deck in a Facebook group ever. I was so happy because it was everything I expected. It came to me in perfect shape, which I was really stoked about. I'm really happy. I mean, this is an amazing, beautiful deck. And ironically, I do have the I Am the Artist tarot, and I never use it because I actually don't like it as much. So, there goes. Sometimes you never know if you're gonna like a reprint of a deck or not, and that kind of justifies me going above and beyond and trying to get a copy of this one, because I knew that there were gonna be another new one coming out, but I had no idea what it was going to look like, and so I'm really happy that I got this one instead. So the next prompt, everyone will know. If you follow my channel, everyone will know which deck I'm going to show you next. But if you're new to my channel, hi and welcome. Let's have fun together. So the prompt is, what tarot deck do you always use for self-readings? Ta-da! Of course it would be this one. I love this deck so much, the Savvy Soul Tarot by Judy Whitelish. I just really love it. It is incredible. It reads like it's literally someone talking to me. And to me only. I mean, I do use it every now and then for readings for friends or for members or for clients, but I am being very jealous of this scope. It is the only one that I have. It is a Kickstarter campaign from a couple of years ago. There has never been a reprint. It is out of print. I don't think there ever be a reprint in the future. It is hard to find. Sometimes you'll see people selling a copy for like $500-600 US, which is a lot of money for a deck. And it's such an amazing deck. For each and every one of these cards, I always like to say that I have a memory. It's almost as if this deck was based on my life. And even if I never rode a motorbike, at least not driving it myself, but I can relate to the energy. It's just absolutely gorgeous, but it's not just beautiful, aesthetically pleasing and everything. It's a collage. I know there's a lot of collage deck, but this one, it's just made with so much heart, so much passion. It is so moving, touching. I find it incredibly talkative to me, but it's also intuitive. I just love, I don't know how else to explain how much I love this deck and how beautiful it is to read with it, and how wonderful a time we always have together, even when it's telling me the truth and even when I don't necessarily like the truth that it's telling me. But this is by far my favorite tarot deck for readings for myself. So the next prompt is really interesting. I had to confess that I had a bit of trouble in choosing a deck for it, and I'm still not entirely satisfied with my pick. But let's see and let's explain why. So the prompt is, which is the most difficult tarot deck to be mastered? Okay, so I had to go with the Tarot de Marseille par Polka, and let me just explain why. So this is in Marseille, so obviously it's got pips, which is, what you would expect from a Marseille. However, the reason why, for me, it is one of those decks that it's actually difficult to master, difficult to vibe and understand, is because it's a very dark deck. So dark in the sense of almost gory, without the almost, it's a gory deck. Let's call a spade, or, in this case, a steak a steak. It is very gory. This is umbilical cords, for example, or, intestine, for example. It is very gory. It is creepy, very creepy, but it is a Marseille. So what happens is that it is a pip deck. Now, what I love about a Marseille is the pips. Why? Because they really give me the possibility to focus on the situation at hand. I don't have to pay attention to the symbols on the card because, well, there aren't any, or rather, there's just the minors. It is not fully scenic, it's a pip, so it's the opposite. So at that point, I really can build a story around the card. I obviously need to know what the card means, because if you don't know your Marseille system, then you can't read with it. I know my Marseille system. It's just that Marseille to me, because it's a peep deck, it gives me the possibility to really space, explore the card without having to follow the symbols represented by the card. But this one, it is a Marseille, but at the same time, it gives you such a spooky interpretation of Marseille, such a creepy, gory images. Even in the peeps, you still see a lot of blood, a lot of entrails, a lot of guts. And so I honestly don't understand whether, and it's my fault, I haven't spent enough time with it, but you see what I'm talking about. So I honestly don't understand whether I actually should read it in a drastically darker kind of key, or if this deck is, I mean, seriously, or if I should just ignore the gore and the blood and the gut and the weirdness of it all and just read it the way I would read a normal Marseille. As a matter of fact, I'm asking you, my dear friends, if you have this deck, let me know in the comments below. Do you read it like a darker Marseille? I wouldn't even know how to read a shadow work Marseille unless we let him morph into an RWS shadow. Honestly, that really leaves me a bit speechless, because I really don't understand what I need to do in order to be able to read this. And it does come with a guidebook, which is very, very interesting, but it's not giving me a, let's say, an idea on how to read the goriness and the weirdness and the creepiness and the darkness. So if you have any idea, just let me know. I'll be very, very interested. And if you're still here, you're a trooper, because this has been a really long video, but, and I've shown so many decks. So we've been through 20 really fun and interesting prompts. And the last one, it's kind of a given. After all of these ones, there has to be a best of the best of the best. So the 21st prompt is, what tarot deck is the best overall? And this was so difficult. Because to me, it's the equivalent of asking me which is my favorite song at the moment, and which is my favorite book at the moment, and which is my favorite movie at the moment. And the problem is that I will always say, yeah, but at the moment. So next month, I may change my mind. And as a matter of fact, what happens is that I have such a huge collection, at least big for me, because 500 decks is a lot of decks, that I get new decks every month. I look at them. Perhaps sometimes there's a new one that really catches my attention and I love working with it. And if you ask me right then, right in that moment, which one is my favorite one, I would definitely say, oh yes, this one, because I just got it and I really love it. But it doesn't make sense, because how can the most recent deck, for example, be the best one overall? I haven't had enough time to work with it yet. So I kind of contradict myself sometimes, but I do let myself feel what I want. And so in some cases, it will be the latest one that I really, really love. But if you had to ask me overall, of all time, throughout my entire collection, which one is the one that I prefer? And also, to be honest, there's different ways to get to that, because it could be the one you work better with, or the one you prefer for different reason, for the art style, etc. But after I even posted a question on Instagram, and so many of you answered with literally completely different. I had something like 60 answers, and they were not two alike. Or I think one deck came out in 3 responses, and it was the Yokai Yochi Tarot, but I already shown that deck. So anyway, to cut a very long story short, I just decided to go with this one here. And please don't hate me. Oh God. Okay, so this is the Bonestone and Earthflesh Tarot by Avalon Cameron, illustrated by Anatorian. This is the indie edition. This deck is not going to be printed as an indie edition in this particular way and setup any longer. It has been picked up mass market, even though we still do not know which publisher is going to be. The book is going to be a lot thinner for what we understand. There's going to be changes in the cards as well. There's going to be changes in the cardstock. There's going to be a lot of differences. And so it just so happens that I mean, every time I think about this deck, every time I think about the colors, every time I think about the faces, every time I think about the art style, I do not like the box. As you can see, it does give me a bit of issues because the cards tend to slip under the foam. So I just prefer to do it this way. It's a lot easier. Every time I think about the images on the cards and the relationship between the images and the meanings of the cards, every time I think about the guidebook, and every single time I basically think about this deck, I cannot help but being in awe of such a beauty. I just love every single one of these cards so much. They are unbelievable. The meanings behind the card are so clear to me, probably because I have been looking at this deck a lot. I had two decks, so one of them I used as a spare to just read it. This one is not the spare because I actually rehomed the spare. Someone was really wanted it. I just cannot believe how much I love this deck because it is by Anna Turian. She's my favorite illustrator, but it's also the combination between the images and the art style and the color palette. The medium used, so it's a mix between watercolor and pencil, I believe. I'm not an expert, so I could be wrong. Please excuse me if I am. But I just find it so fascinating. It's a brilliant take on the RWS. I just love how intense each and every one of these cards are. I mean, this is the Eight of Cups, and of course, it just makes sense that there's the fog. I just love the World card and the Six of Pentacles. And of course, this is Gandalf. For the Magician, it had to be. I just love this deck so much that honestly, I know that this has been a little bit controversial because of the Kickstarter campaign that went on for so long. There's a lot of people saying that they didn't even feel any connection to the deck when it was finally sent out. I did not go through that, so I was spared that because I got it after the Kickstarter campaign, and that might be one of the reasons why I actually really enjoyed this deck, and I had absolutely no negative or contrarian thoughts about this deck whatsoever. But I just love this so much. I mean, I probably said that before, so I'm gonna stop here because otherwise I'm gonna gush about this deck for hours, and we've been here for over an hour already. So that was a very long video, but so much fun, and I absolutely loved filming this VR. Thank you so much for 278 Puerta for creating this tag. It was really amazing. So thanks so much for all of you for staying with me till the end of this video. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.